1 week after signing documents at the title company, an employee called me, and with a strange voice said, "I discovered something very serious in the papers you signed. This is not a matter for the telephone. Meet me immediately at the coffee shop. The main thing is that your son and daughter-in-law must not find out." My hands were trembling so much that I almost dropped the phone. My heart was beating with such force that I could hear it pounding in my ears. The voice of Sarah, the employee at the title company, kept resonating in my head like a terrifying echo. Something serious? How serious could it be? Michael had told me they were simple papers, Social Security paperwork, routine documents to secure my benefits. "Just sign here, Mom. It is for your own good," he had said with that reassuring smile I had known since he was a child. And I, trusting and naive, signed without reading every line. I trusted my own son. What mother would not? Before I could ask any questions, Sarah had hung up. I stood in the middle of my own kitchen, feeling like the floor was becoming unstable beneath my feet. It was Wednesday afternoon. The house was silent. Michael and Jessica had gone out to run some errands. "Oh, just errands," they said. Now, with this call poisoning my mind, every word they had spoken in the last few days began to sound false, calculated, dangerous. I put the phone in the pocket of my apron with shaking hands. I had to act normal. I had to pretend that nothing had happened. Sarah had been very clear. Michael and Jessica could not find out about this meeting. But why? What had they done? What had I signed without knowing? That night was the longest of my life. I could not close my eyes for a single second. Every time I tried, Sarah's voice returned to me. "Something very serious in the papers you signed." I got out of bed at 4 in the morning and walked barefoot through the hallways of my house. My house. The house I built with my husband during 35 years of marriage. Every brick had been placed with our effort. Every wall held our memories. Every corner had our history engraved in it. After my husband died 2 years ago, this house became my only refuge. My last piece of stability in a world that had collapsed. Michael and Jessica moved in with me shortly after the funeral. "You cannot be alone, Mom. You need support. We are going to take care of you," they said with worried faces and sweet words. At first, I appreciated it. Having company after so much silence was comforting. But now, walking through these hallways in the darkness, I realized something I had been ignoring for months. Little by little, without me noticing, they had taken control of everything. Decisions about the house no longer went through me. Furniture was moved without consulting me. My things disappeared or were relocated. "It is better this way, Eleanor," Jessica would say, with that frozen smile that never reached her eyes. Yes, she called me Eleanor. Not Mom, not Mrs. Davis, simply Eleanor. As if we were roommates and not family. As if this were not my house. As if I were not the owner of every inch of these walls. I began to remember that day at the title company with painful clarity. Michael had insisted so much that I accompany him. "It is quick, Mom. Just your signature, and that is it. Do not worry about reading everything. It is pages and pages of boring legal language. I already reviewed it all." Jessica had stayed home that day, but before we left, I saw them exchange a look. One of those looks loaded with meaning. A look that speaks without words. At that moment, I did not give it importance. Now, that look chased me like a nightmare. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water with hands that would not stop shaking. I looked at the clock. 5:30 in the morning. There were still hours until the meeting with Sarah. Hours that would feel like years. I sat at the table and rested my head in my hands. What had I done? What had I signed? Fear ran through my body like electricity. I heard footsteps on the floor above. Michael or Jessica had gotten up. Quickly I stood up and pretended to be making coffee, as if it were a normal morning, as if my world were not crumbling. Jessica appeared in the kitchen doorway with her silk robe and her usual expression. Cold, calculating, distant. "Are you already awake, Eleanor?" she asked with a tone that sounded more like a reproach than concern. "I could not sleep," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. She approached the coffee maker and moved me aside gently, as if I did not know how to make coffee in my own kitchen. "Let me do it." "You rest." That word, rest. The same word they used constantly, as if I were a useless old woman who could not do anything for herself. I am 68 years old, not 88. I have my mind clear and my hands strong, but they treated me as if I were an old piece of furniture, a hindrance that had to be tolerated. Michael came down minutes later, yawning and checking his phone. He did not even look at me. "Good morning," Mom murmured, without looking up from the screen. Before, my son used to greet me with a kiss on the forehead. Now he barely acknowledged my presence. I sat at the table with my cup of coffee and watched them. They spoke to each other in low voices, ignoring me completely, as if I were not there. As if I were invisible in my own house. "We have to leave early today," said Jessica while spreading butter on a piece of toast. "We will be late, Eleanor. Do not wait for us for lunch." She did not ask me if I needed anything. She did not consult me about anything. She just informed me, as if I were an employee, not the owner of this house. I nodded in silence, biting my tongue. I had to act normal. I had to wait until 3 in the afternoon, until the coffee shop, until Sarah, until the truth. They finished their breakfast and left quickly, leaving me alone with my dark thoughts and growing anxiety. I remained seated in that empty kitchen, looking at the walls I had painted myself, the tiles I had chosen myself, and for the first time in 2 years, I felt like a stranger in my own home, like an intruder, like someone who is extra. The hours passed with torturous slowness. I tried to distract myself by cleaning, but my hands shook too much. I tried to watch television, but I could not concentrate. Every minute felt like an eternity. Every second brought me closer to that coffee shop, to that truth that Sarah had to reveal to me. A truth so serious that it could not be said over the phone. A truth that my own son and daughter-in-law could not know I was about to discover. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I put on my best dress. I do not know why. Maybe because I needed to feel strong. Maybe because I sensed that my life was about to change forever. I looked in the mirror and saw a 68-year-old woman with tired eyes and a frightened heart. A woman who had trusted too much. A woman who was about to discover what price she had paid for that trust. I left the house with my stomach in a knot. The coffee shop was only 15 minutes away walking. Every step weighed on me as if I were carrying stones in my shoes. The afternoon sun seemed too bright, almost aggressive. People on the street walked normally, laughing, talking, living their lives without knowing that mine was about to explode. I arrived 5 minutes early. The coffee shop was almost empty. A young couple in a corner, a man reading the newspaper, and there, at a table in the back, was Sarah. I recognized her immediately. She was a woman of about 40, with a serious face and eyes that showed genuine concern. When she saw me enter, she stood up quickly and signaled for me to approach. I sat in front of her with trembling legs. She looked around, making sure no one was listening to us, and then she took a folder out of her purse. A folder I recognized. It was the same folder that had been on the desk at the title company that afternoon. The same folder where I had signed without reading. "Mrs. Davis." Sarah began with a low and urgent voice. "What I am going to say is going to hurt you. But you need to know. You need to know what you signed. What your son made you do." My heart stopped. In that moment, before she opened that folder, before she pronounced the words that would change everything, I already knew. In the deepest part of my being, I already knew. I had been betrayed. By my own blood. By the son I raised, fed, educated, and loved with every fiber of my being. "You did not sign Social Security papers, Mrs. Davis," said Sarah, looking straight into my eyes. "You signed a deed of gift. Your son is now the legal owner of your house. You gave him everything, and he lied to you to get it." The world stopped in that instant. Sarah's words floated in the air like invisible knives. Deed of gift, legal owner. I gave him everything. He lied to me. Every word was a direct blow to the chest. I felt my breath cut short, how my hands clung to the edge of the table, looking for something solid, something real, in the middle of this nightmare that had just become my reality. "No, that cannot be," I whispered with a broken voice. Michael told me they were pension papers. He told me it was for my benefit. My own son would not do that to me. Sarah opened the folder with care, as if she were handling evidence of a crime. And it was. It was evidence of the most painful crime that exists, family betrayal. She took out several documents and placed them in front of me. There was my signature, clear, unmistakable. At the end of pages and pages full of legal terms that I had never read, terms that described the complete transfer of ownership of my house, my home, my refuge, directly to the name of Michael Davis. "Look here, Mrs. Davis," said Sarah, pointing with her finger to a specific section. "This document is a quitclaim deed. You ceded all property rights of your house located at 422 Oak Street, the house where you live, the house you built with your husband. Everything is now in your son's name. Legally, you are no longer the owner of anything." Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. They were not silent tears, they were sobs coming from the deepest part of my shattered soul. The people in the coffee shop began to look at us, but I did not care. Nothing mattered to me anymore. My son had robbed me. My own son, the person I trusted most in this world, had deceived me, manipulated me, and stripped me of everything I had. "How could this happen?" I asked through tears. "How did I not realize?" Sarah took my hand with genuine compassion. "Because he took advantage of your trust, ma'am. Because you are his mother and mothers trust their children. That does not make you stupid. That makes him a monster." She paused and lowered her voice even more. "I should not be here. I could lose my job for this. But when I reviewed the documents after you left, something did not seem right to me. The way your son rushed you, the way you signed without reading, the way he smiled while you did it. That smile gave me chills. I took a deep breath, trying to control the trembling of my body. Why? Why would he do this? He is my son. I always gave him everything. I never denied him anything. I do not know, Mrs. Davis. But what I do know is that this is not a coincidence. This was planned, calculated. And I have the feeling that this is just beginning." Sarah took out her phone and showed me something that froze my blood. "After you left, I heard your son making a call in the parking lot. I was putting some files in my car, and he did not see me. He was talking to someone, probably his wife. He said something that made me make the decision to call you." "What did he say?" I asked with a threat of a voice. "He said, 'It is done. The old woman signed everything. In 6 months we kick her out and sell. With the money from the sale, we are going far away. She is never going to know what hit her.'" Sarah looked at me with eyes full of sadness. "Mrs. Davis, they plan to sell the house out from under you. They plan to kick you out and keep all the money." I felt like something inside me broke definitively. It was not just betrayal. It was a complete plan. A scheme. They had used me, manipulated me, and now they planned to dispose of me as if I were garbage, as if I were worth nothing, as if 35 years of sacrifice, of love, of devotion, meant absolutely nothing. "What can I do?" I asked with desperation. "If the house is already in his name, if I already signed, what can I do?" Sarah squeezed my hand tightly. "You can fight, ma'am. This was fraud. This was deception. Your son manipulated you into signing something you did not understand. There are ways to annul this, but you need to act fast. You need to get a lawyer, and you need to do it without them finding out. If Michael and Jessica suspect that you know the truth, they could accelerate their plans. They could kick you out before you have time to react." "But I live with them," I said, feeling panic invade me. "How am I going to pretend I do not know anything? How am I going to look them in the eyes knowing what they did to me?" "You are going to have to be strong, Mrs. Davis, stronger than you have ever been. You are going to have to act. You are going to have to be the trusting and foolish mother they think you are, while inside you prepare your defense. It is not going to be easy. It is going to be the performance of your life, but if you want to recover what is yours, if you want justice, you have no other choice." Sarah took a card out of her purse and handed it to me. "This is a trustworthy lawyer, Robert Harrison. He is a specialist in family law and property fraud. Tell him I sent you. He will know what to do, but you have to go soon." Every day that passes, they consolidate their position more. I took the card with trembling hands and put it in my purse as if it were a treasure. It was my only hope, my only exit from this nightmare. Sarah also handed me copies of the documents I had signed. "Keep this in a safe place, where they cannot find it. You are going to need these copies." We sat in silence for a moment. me trying to process everything, her watching me with concern. Finally, I wiped my tears and tried to compose myself. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for risking your job for me. Thank you for having the courage to tell me the truth. I have a mother too, Mrs. Davis, and if someone did this to her, I would want someone to have the courage to warn her. No one deserves to be betrayed like this, much less by their own family. She stood up and looked at me with determination. Fight, ma'am. Do not let yourself be defeated. You built that house. It is yours, and you have every right to recover it. I left that coffee shop converted into another person. I was no longer the naive Eleanor who had entered. I was someone different, someone who had just awakened to a brutal reality. I walked back home feeling like every step weighed on me. The streets seemed different. The trees, the houses, everything had a grayer, darker tone, as if the world itself had changed. When I arrived at my house, the house that was no longer mine, I saw Michael's car parked outside. My heart began to beat with force. I had to act normal. I had to pretend. I took 3 deep breaths before opening the door. When I entered, Michael and Jessica were in the living room, sitting on the sofa, looking at something on a laptop. "Hi, Mom," said Michael without looking up. "Where were you?" I swallowed saliva. "I went for a walk. I needed fresh air." Jessica looked me up and down with those cold eyes that I now recognized as what they really were. The eyes of someone who hated me, of someone who wanted me out of here. "Are you okay, Eleanor? You look pale." "I am fine," I lied. "Just a little tired." "Then go rest," she said with a condescending tone. "We have work to do." I went up to my room with my legs shaking. I closed the door and let myself fall onto the bed. I took out the documents Sarah had given me and hid them at the bottom of my closet, between old clothes I knew they would never check. I took out the lawyer's card and put it in my wallet. Tomorrow I would call him. Tomorrow my fight would begin. That night, during dinner, I observed them with new eyes. I observed every gesture, every look, every word. Michael ate with tranquility, as if he had not ruined his own mother's life. Jessica smiled while she talked about her plans to remodel the kitchen. My hands gripped the fork with such force that my knuckles turned white. "What do you think, Eleanor?" asked Jessica suddenly. "Do not you think this kitchen needs a complete renovation? These tiles are so outdated. Those tiles had been chosen by me 30 years ago. My husband and I had spent weeks looking for the perfect ones. Each one had a meaning. Each one was a memory. And she called them outdated. She wanted to change them, because in her mind, this was already her house. I was just a temporary obstacle. "They are nice," I said with a tense voice. "They have sentimental value." She laughed, a cold laugh. "Sentimental value does not pay the bills. Eleanor, this house needs to modernize if we want." She stopped abruptly. Michael shot her a warning look. "If we want what, Jessica?" I asked, feeling how the rage began to boil inside me. "Nothing. Forget it," she said, turning her attention back to her plate. Just thinking out loud. But I had heard. I knew exactly what she was going to say. "If we want to sell it." That was the complete sentence. The one she had swallowed just in time. I felt nauseous. I finished dinner in silence and retired to my room with the excuse that I had a headache. I locked myself in my room and let the tears come out freely. I cried in silence, covering my mouth with a pillow so they would not hear me. I cried for the betrayal. I cried for the naivety. I cried for all the years I dedicated to raising a son who now saw me as an obstacle. But after crying, something changed inside me. The sadness began to transform into something different, something stronger. Rage, determination, thirst for justice. I got out of bed and looked in the mirror. My eyes were red and swollen, but behind those tears was a new fire. I was not going to stay still. I was not going to let them trample me. I had built this house with my husband, brick by brick, sacrifice by sacrifice. I was not going to give it away without a fight. If they wanted war, they would have it. But first, I had to be smart. The next morning, I waited for Michael and Jessica to leave the house. They said they had appointments, meetings, things to do. I did not believe anything anymore. Every word that came out of their mouths sounded hollow, fake, rotten. As soon as I heard the car drive away, I took out Robert Harrison's card. My hands shook as I dialed the number. It rang 3 times before a masculine and professional voice answered. Harrison, law firm. Good morning. Good morning, I said, trying to control the tremor in my voice. I need to speak with the attorney Robert Harrison. It is urgent. Sarah from the title company gave me his contact. There was a brief pause. 1 moment, please. The wait felt eternal. I heard my own heart beating in my ears. Finally, a warm and sure voice spoke on the other end of the line. Ma'am, this is Robert Harrison. Sarah sent me a message letting me know you might call. Tell me, what do you need? And then I told him everything. The words came out of my mouth like an unstoppable torrent. I told him about Michael, about Jessica, about the papers I signed without reading, about the betrayal, about the plan to sell my house and kick me out on the street. I told him everything, while tears rolled down my cheeks again. When I finished, there was a tense silence. Mrs. Davis, said Robert with a serious voice, what your son did is called fraud in the inducement. It is a serious crime. You signed under deception, believing they were completely different documents. That nullifies consent. There are solid legal grounds to reverse this gift. My heart jumped with hope. Really? It can be annulled? Yes, but we need to act with intelligence and speed. I need you to come to my office to review all the documents. I need you to tell me everything in great detail. Every conversation, every suspicious moment, every piece of proof you can remember. And most importantly, I need you to act normally in your house. If your son and daughter-in-law suspect you know the truth, they could take drastic measures. What kind of measures? I asked, feeling fear seize me again. They could try to kick you out immediately. They could claim the house is legally theirs and you no longer have the right to be there. They could become aggressive or threatening. We have seen cases like this before, Mrs. Davis. When people feel cornered, they can become dangerous, especially when there is money involved. Money. It all came down to that. My son had sold me for money. The 35 years I spent raising him, feeding him, educating him, loving him, were worth less than the sale price of a house. I felt nauseous again. How much do you think my house is worth? I asked suddenly. Robert paused. Depending on the location and condition, a property like the one you describe could be worth between $250,000 and $300,000 in the current market, maybe more. $300,000. That was the figure for which my son betrayed me. That was the price of our bond. I felt dizzy. I need to see you today, I said with urgency. I cannot wait. Every day that passes, I feel like I am going crazy. Come to my office at 2 in the afternoon. It is on Main Street, number 803, 5th floor. Bring all the documents you have. And Mrs. Davis, come alone. Make sure no one follows you. I hung up the phone with my heart beating uncontrollably. I had an appointment, I had a plan, I had hope. I put the phone away and made sure to delete the call history. I could not leave any trace. I looked at the clock. It was 10 in the morning. There were still 4 hours until the appointment. 4 hours that I would have to spend pretending normality in this house that no longer belonged to me. I decided to clean, to keep myself busy, and appear normal. While I wiped the living room furniture, my eyes landed on the family photographs decorating the walls. There was Michael as a child, smiling without teeth, hugging me. There we were, the 3 of us, my husband, Michael, and I, on a beach vacation. Michael graduating from college, with tears of pride in my eyes. Every photograph was a memory. Every memory was now poisoned. At what moment did everything change? At what moment did my son stop seeing me as his mother and start seeing me as a means to get money? Was it when he met Jessica? Did she change him? Or was he always like this and I was too blind to see it? The questions tormented me without clear answers. I heard the sound of keys in the door. My blood froze. It was barely 11:30. I did not expect them to return so soon. The door opened and Michael and Jessica entered carrying shopping bags. Bags from expensive stores, designer clothes, expensive shoes, spending money as if they had excess. I wondered where they had gotten so much money lately. "Hi, Mom," said Michael, leaving the bags on the sofa. "Look what I bought for Jessica. A beautiful dress for the gala dinner next month." Jessica took out an elegant black dress that probably cost more than $500. She showed it off with a triumphant smile. "What do you think?" Eleanor. Is not it spectacular? I squeezed the rag I had in my hands tightly. $500 on a dress while I counted every penny to buy food, while I denied myself basic treats so as not to ask them for money, while they planned to leave me on the street. It is very nice, I said with a neutral voice. Michael also bought a new suit, continued Jessica as if nothing. It costs $1,200, but it was worth it. He looks so elegant. Soon we are going to attend many important events. $1,200. I felt rage burning inside me. Where are you getting so much money? I asked before I could stop myself. Michael looked at me with annoyance. That is none of your business, Mom. We are adults. We handle our finances how we want. But you live in my house, I said, feeling like I was losing control. You eat my food. You use my utilities. Jessica let out a dry laugh. Your house, Eleanor? Please. Michael supports you. He gives you a roof. He gives you food. You should be grateful we let you live here. The words hit me like a slap. We let you live here. In my own house. In the house I built. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. I could not explode. Not yet. I had to wait. I had to pretend. You are right, I said, lowering my head in fake submission. Forgive me. I should not have meddled. Michael seemed satisfied with my response. That is better, Mom. Do not worry about things you do not understand. He gave me a condescending pat on the shoulder and went up the stairs with Jessica, both laughing and commenting on their purchases. I remained standing in the middle of the living room, trembling with contained rage. I gave everything for that man. Everything. And now he treated me like trash, like a nuisance, like something annoying that had to be tolerated temporarily. I looked at the clock. 1 in the afternoon. 1 hour left until my appointment with Robert. 1 hour to maintain this mask. 1 hour to keep pretending. I went to my room and changed my clothes. I put on something presentable, but not too elegant. I did not want to raise suspicions. I took the documents from the hiding place and put them carefully in my purse. I checked that I had the lawyer's card, my ID, everything I might need. I breathed deeply in front of the mirror. You can do this, Eleanor, I told myself. You are stronger than you think. I went down the stairs trying to make the least noise possible. Michael and Jessica were in their room, still trying on clothes and taking photos. They did not see me leave. I walked fast toward the bus stop, constantly looking back to make sure no one was following me. The bus arrived 5 minutes later. I got on and sat in a back seat, my heart beating like a drum. The trip to Main Street lasted 20 minutes that felt like hours. Every red light, every bus stop, felt like an eternity. I looked out the window, watching the city pass, but my mind was elsewhere. I was thinking about everything I had lost, everything they had stolen from me, not just a house. They had stolen my trust, they had stolen my peace, they had stolen the illusion of having a family that loved me. I got off the bus on Main Street and walked 2 blocks to building number 803. It was a modern office building, with large windows and an elegant lobby. I entered, feeling my legs shaking. The security guard asked me where I was going, and I told him the 5th floor, the Harrison law firm. He pointed me to the elevators, and I went up with my stomach in a knot. The elevator doors opened on the 5th floor, and in front of me was a glass door with gold letters that said Harrison and Associates, Family and Estate Law. I took a deep breath and pushed the door. A young receptionist received me with a professional smile. Good afternoon. How can I help you? I have an appointment with the attorney Robert Harrison. I am Eleanor Davis. She checked her computer and nodded. Yes, he is expecting you. Please, have a seat. I will let him know you have arrived. I sat in one of the chairs in the waiting room, clutching my purse as if it were a life preserver. The walls were decorated with diplomas and certifications. There were magazines on a coffee table that I did not have the spirit to browse. I just wanted this to end. I just wanted answers. I just wanted justice. 2 minutes later, a man of approximately 50 years came out of one of the offices. He was tall, with gray hair, glasses, and an impeccable suit. He had a serious expression, but his eyes transmitted warmth and professionalism. Mrs. Eleanor Davis, he asked, extending his hand. Yes, that is me, I said, standing up and shaking his hand. I am Robert Harrison. Please, come into my office. He guided me down a hallway to a spacious office with a wooden desk, shelves full of legal books, and windows overlooking the city. He offered me a seat in front of his desk, and he sat on the other side with a notebook and a pen. "Mrs. Davis, I know this is difficult for you. I know you are going through a terrible time, but I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, with as much detail as possible, every conversation, every event, every strange thing you have noticed. Everything can be important." And so I did. I told him the whole story since my husband died 2 years ago. I told him how Michael and Jessica moved into my house with the excuse of taking care of me. I told him how little by little they took control of everything. I told him about the day at the title company, about how Michael rushed me to sign, about how he told me they were pension papers. I told him about Sarah's call, about the meeting at the coffee shop, about the terrible revelation. I told him about Michael and Jessica's excessive spending, about how they treated me like an employee in my own house. Robert listened to everything in silence, taking notes meticulously. When I finished, he put down the pen and looked at me with a grave expression. "Mrs. Davis, this is a clear case of fraud due to lack of consent. Your son deliberately deceived you about the nature of the documents you signed. That is illegal. The gift can be annulled." "Are you sure?" I asked with a hopeful voice. "Totally sure. But we need solid proof. We need to demonstrate that you were deceived, that you did not really understand what you were signing, and that your son took advantage of your trust. Sarah's statement is going to be crucial. Would she be willing to testify?" "I think so," I replied, remembering Sarah's bravery in calling me. "She risked her job to warn me. I think she would be willing to help." Robert nodded. "Good. I am going to contact her. We also need to build a complete file. I need you to document everything you can. Conversations, strange expenses, any comment they make about selling the house or getting you out of there. If you can record conversations, even better." "Record conversations? Is that legal?" I asked, surprised. "In this state, it is legal to record conversations where you are a participant. It is not legal to record other people's conversations, but if you are present and participate, you can record them. Use your phone, record everything you can, every threat, every derogatory comment, every plan they mention. Everything will help." I stayed silent, processing this. I would have to become a spy in my own house. I would have to record my own son planning my destruction. It was surreal. It was painful, but it was necessary. "How long will all this take?" I asked. "If we act fast and have good evidence, we could have a resolution in 3 or 4 months. I am going to file a lawsuit to annul the gift due to fraud and undue influence. I am also going to request a restraining order on the assets so they cannot sell the property while the case is ongoing. It is crucial that we act before they try to sell it. 3 or 4 months, 120 days pretending normality, 120 days living with the people who betrayed me, 120 days acting like the foolish and naive mother they thought I was. I do not know if I can do it," I admitted with a broken voice. "I do not know if I can see them every day, knowing what they did to me." Robert leaned forward with a sympathetic expression. "Mrs. Davis, I understand this is extremely difficult, but think about the alternative. If you reveal to them now that you know the truth, they are going to take immediate measures. They could kick you out of the house legally because now it is your son's property. They could accelerate the sale. They could destroy evidence. You would lose all strategic advantage. You need to be strong. You need to endure. For your future. For your justice." He was right. I knew it. But that did not make it easier. What if they suspect something? What if they realize I am acting differently? Be the same person as always. Submissive, quiet, obedient. It is exactly what they expect from you. Do not give them any reason to suspect. And meanwhile, collect evidence. Observe. Listen. Record. Every piece of evidence brings us closer to winning this case. I nodded slowly. Robert took out several documents and began to explain the legal process to me. He talked about hearings, deadlines, strategies. He showed me similar cases he had won. He gave me hope. For the first time since that call from Sarah, I felt that maybe, just maybe, I could recover what was mine. "How much is all this going to cost?" I asked finally, fearing the answer. Normally I would charge a $5,000 retainer for a case like this. But Sarah told me your situation. I know you do not have free access to money right now. I am going to make an exception. We will work on a contingency fee basis. If we win the case, you pay me from the recovered money or the property. If we lose, you owe me nothing." Tears began to roll down my cheeks again, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude. "I do not know how to thank you, Mr. Harrison. Thank yourself for having the courage to fight. Many people in your situation simply give up. They accept the betrayal. They let themselves be trampled. You do not. You are here. You are fighting. That requires immense courage." We spent the next hour reviewing the documents I had brought. Robert analyzed them carefully, pointing out irregularities, taking notes, building the case. When we finished, it was almost 4 in the afternoon. I had to return home before Michael and Jessica started asking questions. "I am going to contact Sarah tomorrow," said Robert while accompanying me to the door, "and I am going to start preparing the lawsuit. You focus on collecting evidence and maintaining the facade. Anything you need, any emergency, call me at any time. This is my personal number." He handed me another card with a handwritten number on the back. I left that office feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was hope, yes, but there was also fear. Fear of what was coming. Fear of what I would have to do. Fear of failing. The trip back on the bus was silent. I looked at the people around me living their normal lives without knowing that I was in the middle of a battle for my survival. I arrived home just before 5. Michael and Jessica were in the kitchen preparing dinner. Well, Jessica was preparing. Michael was sitting at the table looking at his phone as always. "Where were you, Mom?" asked Michael without looking up from the screen. "I went for a walk," I lied, "and then I visited a friend." "Which friend?" asked Jessica with a suspicious tone. "Barbara, a neighbor from years ago," I improvised. "We met in the park and went for coffee." Jessica looked at me evaluatingly, as if she were trying to determine if I was lying to her. Finally, she shrugged. "That is great. At least it distracts you." I went up to my room with my heart beating fast. I had passed the first test. They had believed my lie. But I knew I could not let my guard down. Every move had to be calculated. Every word had to be measured. A single mistake, and everything would come crashing down. I sat on the edge of the bed and took out my phone. I had to learn to record conversations without it being noticed. I searched on the internet and found tutorials. It was simpler than I thought. I just had to open the voice recording app and leave the phone nearby, as if nothing. That night, during dinner, I heard them talk about their plans. They talked among themselves as if I did not exist, as if I were just another piece of furniture in the house. Invisible, irrelevant, my phone was in my apron pocket, recording every word. The real estate agent said we could get up to $320,000, Jessica was saying with barely contained enthusiasm. With that amount, we could buy ourselves a condo in the new development and still have money left over to invest. Michael nodded while chewing. "Yes, but we have to wait a little longer. We cannot rush. It has to seem natural." "How much longer are we going to wait?" asked Jessica with impatience. "It has already been almost a month since she signed. I want out of here now. This house is so old and depressing. Old and depressing." The words went through me like knives. This house was my entire life. Every corner had a memory. Every wall had been a witness to my happiness, my pain, my existence. And for her, it was simply old and depressing. I gripped the silverware tightly, trying to keep my face neutral. "Patience, love," said Michael with a condescending tone. 6 months. That was the plan. If we kick her out sooner, it could look suspicious. She could ask questions. This way, when we tell her that we need our own home and that she should move to a smaller place, it will seem reasonable. It will seem natural. Smaller place. That was a euphemism. I knew exactly what they were referring to. A cheap nursing home. A facility where I would be just another number. Where I would spend my last years forgotten, while they enjoyed the money from my house. My house that I had built with my husband. My house for which we had worked a lifetime. "And if she resists?" asked Jessica. "What if she does not want to leave?" Michael let out a dry laugh. "She is not going to resist. Look at her. She is an old woman, tired, without resources. What is she going to do? Where is she going to go? She has no one else. We are all she has. When we tell her to leave, she will leave, because she will have no other choice. I felt tears threatening to come out, but I held them back. I could not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. I had to be strong. I had to keep recording. Keep collecting proof. Robert was right. Every word they said was evidence. Every plan they revealed was one more piece of the puzzle that would sink them. "Eleanor, are you okay?" asked Jessica suddenly, looking at me with those cold eyes. I looked up and forced a weak smile. "Yes, I am just tired." "You are always tired," she said with a mocking tone. "Maybe you should go to the doctor. At your age, one never knows what might be failing. At my age, I am 68, not 90. I am perfectly healthy. But for them, I was a decrepit old woman to be discarded." "Maybe you are right," I said, lowering my head submissively. "I will go to the doctor soon." Michael got up from the table, leaving his dirty plate there, expecting me to pick it up like always. "Let's go upstairs, Jessica. I have to show you something on the laptop." They left me alone in the kitchen with the dirty dishes and my silent pain. I took out the phone and stopped the recording. I saved it with a coded name only I would understand. Proof number 1. I had many more to collect. The following days became a calculated torture. Every morning I woke up knowing I would have to act, that I would have to pretend, that I would have to smile at the people who had betrayed me in the worst way possible. But also every day I collected more proof. I recorded conversations. I photographed documents when they went out. I took detailed notes of everything they said and did. One afternoon, while cleaning their room, I found something that froze my blood. It was a folder hidden in Michael's desk drawer. Inside were documents from a real estate agent, brochures, price evaluations, and worst of all, a preliminary sales contract. They had found buyers, a young couple willing to pay $290,000 for my house. The tentative sale date was in 4 months. 4 months was all the time I had left before they executed their plan. I photographed every document with trembling hands. My phone became my best ally and my biggest secret. Every photo was sent immediately to Robert via email from a new account I had created specifically for this. I could not risk them checking my phone and finding the evidence. Robert responded quickly, always with words of encouragement. "Excellent work, Mrs. Davis. This is pure gold. Keep it up. We almost have everything we need for the case." His messages were my only comfort in those dark days, knowing someone was on my side, that someone believed me, that someone was fighting for me. One night, 2 weeks after my first visit to the lawyer, I heard Michael and Jessica arguing in their room. Their voices rose enough for me to hear from the hallway. I approached silently with my phone recording in the pocket of my robe. "I told you not to spend so much," Michael was saying with a tense voice. "We have to keep up appearances until we sell." "And what do you want me to do?" replied Jessica with a defensive tone. "Live like a pauper while we wait? She already signed the papers. The house is yours. We can do whatever we want." "It is not that simple," insisted Michael. "If we spend too much now, if someone asks questions, it could complicate everything. We need to be smart." "You are a coward," spat Jessica with venom. "This was my idea from the beginning. I was the one who convinced you to make her sign. I was the one who planned everything. And now you want to go slow? We have already been in this horrible house with your horrible mother for months. I want my money. I want out of here." There was a heavy silence. Then I heard Michael's voice, lower but clear. "It was your idea, yes, but I am the one carrying the weight. She is my mother. It is my last name. If something goes wrong, I am the one who pays the consequences." "Nothing is going to go wrong," said Jessica with cold confidence. "She is too stupid to realize anything. Look at her. She spends her time cleaning and cooking like an employee. She does not even ask. She does not even suspect. She is pathetic. Pathetic. That word resonated in my ears. I had to bite my lip not to scream, not to burst into that room and tell them I knew everything, that their perfect plan was about to collapse. But I couldn't. Not yet. I needed more proof. I needed to be patient. Revenge would be much sweeter when the right moment arrived. I walked away from the hallway before they came out and went down to the kitchen. My heart beat so fast I thought it would burst out of my chest. I stopped the recording and saved it carefully. Proof number 7. Each recording was like a piece of armor. Each photographed document was a weapon. I was preparing for the final battle. The next day, Robert called me. Mrs. Davis, I have news. I spoke with Sarah. She is willing to testify. I also reviewed all the evidence you sent me. It is enough. We can proceed with the lawsuit. I am going to file it next week. My heart leaped. Really? Is it time? Yes. But I need to warn you about something important. Once we file the lawsuit, Michael and Jessica will be notified. They will know you are suing them. Their reaction could be unpredictable. They could become aggressive. They could try to intimidate you. Do you have somewhere to stay if things get ugly? The question took me by surprise. I hadn't thought about that. I have no one, I admitted with a small voice. My close friends died or moved. My family is far away. Michael was all I had. Robert sighed on the other end of the line. I understand. Look, I am going to request a preventive protection order along with the lawsuit. That will prohibit them from threatening you or kicking you out of the house while the case is in process. If they violate that order, they will face criminal charges. But, Mrs. Davis, I need you to be mentally prepared. The next few days are going to be the hardest. When they receive the notification, when they know you are facing them, they are going to show their true face. And it is not going to be pretty. I swallowed hard. I am ready. I have been ready since I discovered the truth. I am no longer afraid of them. I am no longer going to be the silent victim. That is the right attitude, said Robert approvingly. The lawsuit will be filed on Monday. They will receive the notification on Tuesday or Wednesday. Stand firm. Do not let yourself be intimidated. And call me if there is any problem, any threat, anything. I will be pending. The weekend passed in unbearable tension. I knew Monday would change everything, that on Tuesday or Wednesday, when the notification arrived, the mask would fall. There would be no more pretending. There would be no more white lies. It would be open war. And I was ready to fight. On Monday morning, while Michael and Jessica ate breakfast calmly without knowing what was coming, my phone vibrated with a message from Robert. Lawsuit filed. Protection order approved. May God be with you, Mrs. Davis. Now comes the hard part. I read the message with trembling hands and deleted it immediately. I looked up and saw Michael laughing at something on his phone. Jessica was spreading jam on her toast with a bored expression. Neither of them had any idea that the bomb had just been activated, that in a matter of hours, their perfectly planned lives would begin to crumble. Tuesday passed without incident. No notification arrived. Every time the doorbell rang, my heart accelerated. But it was just the mailman with junk mail or a delivery driver with packages for the neighbors. Michael and Jessica continued with their normal routines, going out, coming back, ignoring me, planning their future with my money, oblivious to the storm that was approaching. On Wednesday afternoon, it finally happened. I was in the kitchen making coffee when I heard the doorbell. Michael went to answer. I heard voices in the entrance, a male voice I did not recognize. Michael Davis? I have a legal notification for you. I need you to sign here. There was a silence. Then I heard the sound of paper being torn, of an envelope opening. And then, the scream. What the hell is this? Michael's voice rumbled through the whole house. Sounds of hurried footsteps, Jessica coming down the stairs. What is wrong? What is that? It is a lawsuit, said Michael with a trembling voice of barely contained rage. My mother is suing us. She is asking for the annulment of the gift. She says we deceived her. She says there was fraud. The silence that followed was absolute. I could feel the tension electrifying the air. My heart was beating so fast I was sure they could hear it. I gripped the coffee cup between my hands, preparing myself for what was coming. Eleanor! Jessica's scream made me jump. Furious footsteps approaching the kitchen. The door swung open, and there they were. Michael with the document in his hand, his face red with fury. Jessica with eyes burning with pure hate. They looked at me as if they wanted to destroy me. What does this mean? Asked Michael, brandishing the papers in front of me. You are suing us? Your own son? I placed the cup on the table carefully. My hands were no longer shaking. In fact, I felt strangely calm, as if I had been waiting for this moment for weeks, because I had been waiting for it. Yes, I said with a firm voice. I am suing you, because you deceived me, because you stole my house, Because you planned to leave me on the street. Michael's face transformed into something I had never seen before. Pure evil. What are you talking about, you crazy old woman? No one deceived you. You signed those papers voluntarily. The house is mine now. Legally mine. You told me they were pension papers? I replied, standing my ground. You lied to me about what I was signing. That is called fraud, and I have proof. Jessica let out a hysterical laugh. Proof? What proof could you have? You are a stupid old woman who does not even know how to use a phone correctly. I smiled. It was a small smile, but real. I have recordings. I have documents. I have witnesses. I know everything. I know you plan to sell the house for $290,000. I know you already have buyers. I know you were going to send me to a nursing home. I know everything. The color drained from Michael's face. Jessica stepped back as if she had been hit. Are you lying? Said Michael with a weak voice. You have nothing. I have weeks of recordings. I continued, feeling the power shift hands. I heard you planning it all. I heard you talk about how much money you would get. I heard you call me pathetic, stupid, a nuisance. I have every word, every plan, every lie. And now a judge is going to hear it all. Michael lunged toward me with his fist raised. For a second I thought he was going to hit me, but Jessica stopped him by grabbing his arm. No, are you crazy? If you lay a hand on her, you are going to make everything worse. We already have enough problems. Besides, I said, pointing to the papers Michael had in his hand, there is a protection order. If you touch me, if you threaten me, you go to jail. So I suggest you lower that fist, Michael. He lowered his hand slowly, but his eyes were still full of hate. You are an ingrate, he spat with venom. I gave you a roof. I gave you food. I took care of you after Dad died. And this is how you pay me. The laugh that came out of my throat was bitter. You gave me a roof? This is my house. It was mine before you were born. I built it with your father. Every brick was placed with our sweat and sacrifice. And you stole it from me. You deceived me. You planned to leave me with nothing, and I am the ingrate? The house is in my name, said Michael, regaining some of his arrogance. You signed the papers. It is legal. No judge is going to change that. We will see, I replied with icy calm. Because the judge is also going to hear the recording where Jessica says she planned everything, where she says she convinced you to make me sign, where you both talk about how you were going to kick me out and sell. Fraud is fraud, Michael, and you are going to pay for it. Jessica turned pale. You are making all that up. We never said any of that. I took out my phone and found one of the recordings. I pressed play. Jessica's voice filled the kitchen. This was my idea from the beginning. I was the one who convinced you to make her sign. I was the one who planned everything. I stopped the recording and looked at them. Do you want to hear more? I have hours of material. The silence that followed was tomb-like. Michael and Jessica looked at each other with barely disguised panic. They were finally beginning to understand the gravity of the situation, finally realizing their perfect plan had cracks. Huge cracks that I had found and exploited. Get out of this house, said Michael, finally, with a trembling voice. Get out right now. No, I replied, crossing my arms. This is my house, and the protection order says clearly that you cannot kick me out while the case is in process. So if anyone has to leave, it is you. Jessica let out a scream of frustration. This is ridiculous. The house is Michael's. He decides who stays and who goes. The house is in legal dispute, I explained with exaggerated patience, as if I were speaking to a child. Until the judge decides, no one can sell and no one can be expelled. Those are the rules. If you do not like them, talk to your lawyer. Michael crumpled the notification papers with rage. We are going to hire the best lawyer we can find. We are going to destroy you in court. When we are done with you, you will not have a pot to piss in. I shrugged with a calm I did not know I possessed. Try it. You are going to need a lot of money for a good lawyer. Where are you going to get it? From the $1,200 you spent on a suit? From Jessica's $500 dress? Oh, wait. You thought you would have $300,000 from the sale of my house. But that is not going to happen. So good luck paying for expensive lawyers. Michael's face turned red again. Jessica looked like she was about to explode. They turned around and left the kitchen, stomping loudly, went up the stairs, and slammed their bedroom door. I heard them screaming for hours, screaming at each other, screaming on the phone with lawyers, screaming at the walls, and I remained seated in my kitchen, drinking my coffee, feeling freer than I had felt in months. That night we did not eat dinner together. They stayed locked in their room. I prepared something simple for myself and ate alone in the kitchen. The silence was beautiful. For the first time in so long, I did not have to pretend. I did not have to act. I did not have to be the submissive and foolish mother. I could be myself. I could be Eleanor Davis, the woman who did not let herself be trampled, the woman who fought for what was hers. The following days were tense but strangely liberating. Michael and Jessica barely spoke a word to me. They looked at me with pure hate every time we crossed paths in the house. But they could not touch me. They could not kick me out. The protection order was my shield, and they knew it. I heard them in their room making desperate calls to lawyers. But they all gave them the same bad news. The case did not look good for them. The fraud was evident. The recordings were damning. A week after the notification, Robert called me with news. "Mrs. Davis, your son's lawyer contacted me. He wants to negotiate an out-of-court settlement." "What does that mean?" I asked, confused. "It means they want to resolve this outside of court. Probably because they know they are going to lose. They want to offer you something in exchange for you dropping the lawsuit." "Tell me," I replied, curious. "They offer to return the house to you in exchange for you not filing criminal charges for fraud. Basically, they want to avoid jail." I stayed silent, processing this. I had the house back. I could recover my property. But a part of me wanted more. I wanted complete justice. I wanted them to pay for what they did to me. "What do you recommend?" I asked finally. Robert sighed. "As your lawyer, I recommend you accept. A trial can take months, even years. It is emotionally draining. And although the evidence is on our side, you never know how a judge might decide. With this agreement, you recover your house immediately. No more fights, no more suffering." "And they go free?" I asked. "After everything they did to me?" The bitterness in my voice was palpable. "Not exactly free. They have to return the property. They have to pay all the legal costs of the process. And they have to sign a document where they acknowledge that the gift was obtained through deception. That document remains in public record. Their reputation will be stained. And if they ever try something similar with someone else, that document can be used as evidence of a pattern of fraudulent behavior." I thought about this carefully. On one hand, I wanted to see them suffer. I wanted to see them truly pay. But on the other hand, I wanted my peace. I wanted to recover my house and my life. I wanted them out of my life forever. "I accept," I said finally, "but with an additional condition. I want them out of my house immediately. Not in a week, not in a month. I want them to pack their things and leave in 48 hours. "That is reasonable," said Robert. "I'm going to include it in the agreement. I will have news for you soon." 2 days later, the agreement was signed. Michael and Jessica had 48 hours to leave my house. The property would be transferred back to my name through a corrective deed. All legal costs, which totaled more than $8,000, would be paid by them. And an official document would remain registered, establishing that the original gift had been obtained through fraud and deception. The afternoon, Michael and Jessica began to pack. I sat in the living room watching them. They went up and down the stairs carrying boxes. Their faces showed humiliation, rage, and defeat. They did not speak to me at any moment. They did not look me in the eyes. They simply packed in silence, knowing they had lost, that their perfect plan had crumbled, that the foolish and pathetic woman they despised so much had beaten them. Jessica passed in front of me carrying a suitcase. She stopped for a second and shot me a look of pure hate. "This does not end here, Eleanor. You are going to regret this." I smiled sweetly. "I do not think it is a good idea to threaten me, Jessica. The protection order is still in effect. One more threat and I can call the police. Do you really want to add more problems to the ones you already have?" She clenched her jaw and kept walking without saying anything else. Michael came down with another box and dropped it heavily near the door. "I hope you are happy," he said with a voice loaded with bitterness. "You destroyed your own family for a house." I stood up and walked toward him. I looked him straight in the eyes. "I did not destroy anything, Michael. You did. You decided to deceive me. You decided to rob me. You decided to betray me in the worst way possible. I only defended myself. I only recovered what was mine. If there is anyone who destroyed this family, that is you." For a moment I saw something in his eyes. Regret? Shame? But it disappeared as quickly as it appeared. He turned around and went up the stairs again. 1 hour later, they had everything packed. A moving truck had arrived to take their things. Michael and Jessica made several trips, loading boxes and suitcases. I remained seated in my living room, watching how they removed every piece of their presents from my house. Finally, only one box remained. Michael carried it and stopped at the door. He turned to look at me one last time. "Are you not going to say anything? Are you not going to try to fix this?" "Fix what?" I asked with weariness. "The trust you broke? The love you betrayed? There is nothing to fix. Michael, you killed it all when you decided to see me as a means to get money, instead of as your mother. You were always cold," he said with resentment. "Always so hard. You never showed me real love." His words hit me like a punch. "I never showed you love. I gave you everything, Michael. Every penny your father and I earned was for you. Your education, your clothes, your whims. We sacrificed vacations, luxuries, everything to give you the best life possible. And when your father died and I was left alone, you were the only thing I had left. I opened my house to you. I gave you my trust. I gave you my unconditional love. And you paid me with betrayal. So do not dare tell me I never showed you love. The one who never showed love was you." Michael swallowed saliva. For a second I thought he was going to cry. But he simply turned around and walked out the door. Jessica followed him without looking back. I heard the moving truck drive away. I heard the silence fill every corner of my house. I stayed sitting there for several minutes, processing what had just happened. Then I broke down crying. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the loss, for the betrayal, for the definitive end of a relationship that was once the most important thing in my life. I cried for the mother I had been. I cried for the son I thought I had, but who never really existed. I cried until I had no more tears left. When I finally calmed down, I got up and walked through my house. I touched the walls. I looked at every corner. This house was full of memories, good and bad. But it was mine again. No one could take it from me. No one could kick me out. It was mine forever. I entered the room Michael and Jessica had occupied. It was empty, clean, as if they had never been there. I opened the windows to let fresh air in. I needed to clean not just physically, but energetically. I needed to remove every trace of their presence. I spent the next few days cleaning obsessively. I washed every sheet. I cleaned every surface. I painted the walls of their room. I changed the locks. I bought new plants to decorate. I was claiming my space. I was making this house truly mine again. 1 week after Michael and Jessica left, Robert called me to confirm that all legal documents had been processed. The house was officially in my name again. The corrective deed had been recorded. The document where Michael acknowledged the fraud was filed in public records. Everything was officially over. "Congratulations, Mrs. Davis," said Robert with genuine pride in his voice. "You recovered what was yours. You fought and you won." "Thanks to you," I replied with an emotional voice. "Without your help, without Sarah, I would have ended up on the street without knowing what hit me. I owe you my life, my house, my freedom. You had the courage to fight. That is what matters. Many people in your situation simply give up. They accept defeat. But you did not. You stood up and fought for what was right. That requires immense courage." He paused. "How do you feel now that it is all over?" I stayed thinking about that. How did I feel? "Free," I said finally. "I feel free, and sad, and relieved, and angry. I feel everything at the same time. That is completely normal," said Robert with understanding. "What you lived was a deep trauma, a betrayal by someone you loved. It is going to take time to heal. But the important thing is that now you have the opportunity to do it. In your own house, on your own terms." He was right. Time passed slowly. The first months after Michael left were strange. The house felt too big, too silent. Sometimes I surprised myself, waiting to hear his steps on the stairs. Other times, I prepared food for 3 people out of habit and then remembered I was alone. The pain of betrayal did not disappear from one day to the next. Some nights I woke up crying. Other times I looked at old photographs and wondered where I had failed as a mother. But little by little, the pain began to transform into something different. Into strength, into wisdom, into peace. I began to go out more. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during the years Michael and Jessica lived with me. I resumed hobbies I had abandoned. I started taking painting classes at the community center. I joined a book club. Slowly, I began to rebuild my life. A life that was mine, without manipulations, without lies, without betrayals. One day, 6 months after all the legal drama, I received a call from an unknown number. For a second, I hesitated to answer. But something told me to do it. "Hello, Mrs. Davis." It was a female voice I did not recognize. "I am Emily, Jessica's sister." My heart accelerated. Why was Jessica's sister calling me? "What do you want?" I asked, with a defensive tone. "I just want you to know something," said Emily with a serious voice. "Something you deserve to know. Jessica and Michael separated. She left him 2 months ago. Apparently, he did not have as much money as she thought. When she realized they were going to have to work like normal people and that they were not going to get rich selling your house, she left him. She went with another man who supposedly has real money." I stayed silent, processing this information. A small part of me felt something similar to satisfaction. Michael had lost everything. The house, his mother, and now his wife. The woman for whom he had betrayed his own family had abandoned him as soon as things got difficult. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. "Because I never agreed with what they did to you," replied Emily. "I told Jessica it was wrong, that you did not deserve that, but she did not listen to me. She only saw the money. And now that everything exploded, now that Michael is alone and ruined, I thought you deserved to know that justice arrived in more than one form." "How is he?" I asked, without being able to stop myself. Despite everything, he was still my son. A part of me still worried. "Devastated," said Emily with honesty. "He lives in a small apartment. He works 2 jobs to pay debts. The legal costs of the case left him bankrupt. And now he is completely alone. Jessica destroyed him as much as she destroyed you." I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of emotions. Pain for what my son was suffering, satisfaction that justice had been served, sadness for how things had ended. "Thank you for telling me," I said finally. "But that changes nothing. What he did to me is unforgivable." "I understand," said Emily softly. "I just thought you should know. Take care, Mrs. Davis." And she hung up. I remained seated with the phone in my hand for several minutes. Michael was suffering. He was alone. He was paying for his mistakes. Part of me, the part that was still his mother, wanted to call him, wanted to offer him help. But the stronger part, the part that had been betrayed and trampled, refused. He had made his choice. He had chosen money over me. He had chosen betrayal over family. And now he lived with the consequences. The following months brought more changes. I completely renovated the house with the money I had saved over the years. I painted all the walls in cheerful colors. I changed the old furniture for new ones. I planted a garden in the backyard. I converted the room Michael had occupied into an art studio. Every change was symbolic. I was erasing the past. I was creating a new future. Sarah came to visit me one day. She brought flowers and a homemade pie. We sat in my newly renovated living room drinking tea. "The house looks beautiful," she said, looking around with approval. "You look happy, Mrs. Davis." "I feel happy," I admitted. "For the first time in years, I feel truly happy, free, at peace." "I am so glad," said Sarah with sincerity. "You know, sometimes I think about that day when I called you. I was so afraid of getting into trouble, but I knew it was the right thing. I could not let your son get away with it. You saved me," I said, taking her hand. "Without your call, without your bravery, I would have ended up on the street without even understanding what had happened to me. I owe you my life, my house, my freedom." She smiled with tears in her eyes. "I just did what any decent person would do. But I am glad to have made a difference." We stayed talking for hours. She told me about her life, her family, her dreams. I told her about my new hobbies, my new friends, my new life. When she left, I felt that I had not only won my house, I had won a true friend. Someone who had risked for me without expecting anything in return. One autumn afternoon, almost a year after everything began, I was painting in my new studio when I heard the doorbell. I was not expecting anyone. I wiped my hands and went to open it. When I opened the door, I froze. There was Michael. But it was not the arrogant and well-dressed Michael who had left my house. This Michael was thin, with deep circles under his eyes, simple and cheap clothes. He looked defeated, broken, destroyed. "Hi, Mom," he said with a barely audible voice. I stood there without knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face. Part of me wanted to hug him and comfort him. But neither of those parts won. I simply stood there looking at him. "What do you want, Michael?" "I come to ask for forgiveness," he said with tears beginning to roll down his cheeks. "I know I have no right. I know what I did to you was unforgivable. But I need you to know that I regret it. Every day, every hour, I regret everything. Do you regret it because you lost? Or do you regret it because you really understand what you did to me?" I asked with a cold voice. "I regret it because I hurt you," he said, sobbing openly now. "I regret it because I betrayed the only person who was always there for me. I regret it because I let money and Jessica blind me. I lost everything, Mom. The house I wanted to steal from you was never worth what I lost. I lost my mother. I lost my dignity. I lost my soul." Tears began to roll down my cheeks too. But they were not tears of weakness. They were tears of final liberation. "I forgive you, Michael," I said slowly. "I forgive you because hating you consumes me inside, and I no longer want to be consumed by anything negative. But forgiving you does not mean forgetting. It does not mean things go back to how they were before. That is never going to happen." Michael lowered his head, with more tears falling to the ground. "I understand. I do not expect you to forget. I do not expect you to receive me with open arms. I just needed you to know that I am sorry. I would give anything to turn back time and do things differently." "But you cannot turn back time," I said with a firm voice but without cruelty. "No one can. Decisions have consequences. You chose to betray me. You chose money over your mother. You chose to believe Jessica instead of valuing what we had. And now you live with those consequences. Just as I lived with the consequences of trusting too much. I know I do not deserve your forgiveness," continued Michael with a broken voice. "I know I do not deserve anything from you. But I wanted you to know that I miss you. I miss the mornings when we ate breakfast together. I miss your advice. I miss your presence. I miss having a mother." His words pierced my heart, but I maintained my firm posture. "I miss you too, Michael. I miss the son I thought I had. The boy who smiled without teeth, the young man who dreamed of changing the world. But that Michael no longer exists. Maybe he never really existed. And the Michael who betrayed me, who lied to me, who planned to leave me on the street, that Michael cannot enter this house. He cannot return to my life, because if I do that, I would be betraying myself." Michael nodded slowly, accepting my words, although they clearly hurt him. "Is there any way that someday, maybe, we can rebuild something? Even if it is a small relationship, a coffee every now and then." I stayed thinking about that for a long moment. Could I forgive completely someday? Could I rebuild some kind of relationship with my son? The truth was, I did not know. "Maybe," I said finally, "someday, when I have healed completely, when the pain is not so sharp, maybe then we can talk, but not today. Today is still too soon. Today it still hurts too much." "I will wait for you," said Michael, wiping his tears. "I will wait as long as you need. And meanwhile, I will work on being a better person, on being the son you deserve to have from the beginning." He turned to leave, but stopped and turned back one more time. "The house looks beautiful, Mom. I am glad you recovered it. It was always yours. It should have always been yours." And with those words, he walked slowly down the street until he disappeared around the corner. I closed the door and leaned against it, letting the tears flow freely. It was a different cry this time. It was not of pure pain or rage. It was a cry of closure, of acceptance, of final liberation. My son had come to ask for forgiveness. I had forgiven him. But that did not mean things went back to how they were before. Some things, once broken, can never be completely repaired. They can only be accepted and moved on from. The following months were of deep peace. I continued with my painting classes and discovered I had real talent. Some of my works were exhibited in a local gallery. I made new friends in the book club. One of them, Barbara, became my closest confidant. I told her my whole story, and she shared hers. I discovered I was not the only person who had been betrayed by family, that I was not the only one who had had to fight for what was hers. The world was full of survivors like me. One day, almost 2 years after all the drama, I was sitting in my garden, enjoying the afternoon sun when my phone rang. It was Robert, the lawyer who had helped me recover my house. Mrs. Davis, I have interesting news. Remember the document we registered where Michael acknowledged the fraud? Yes. What about it? I asked, curious. Well, it turns out another woman used it as evidence in a similar case. Apparently, Jessica tried to do the same thing with her new husband. She tried to make him sign fraudulent documents to keep his property, but the husband investigated Jessica's background and found the document from your case. He used it to get a restraining order and to annul their marriage before she could steal anything from him. I stayed silent, processing this. The document had served to protect someone else. My suffering, my fight, had prevented another person from going through the same thing. I am glad it served for something good, I said finally. More than something good, Mrs. Davis. That document is now in public record. Anyone who investigates Jessica is going to find it. Her pattern of behavior is documented. She can no longer do this to anyone else without facing immediate consequences. You not only saved yourself, you saved future victims too. When I hung up the phone, I felt deep satisfaction. My fight had not been just for me. It had been for all the elderly people who are victims of family fraud, for all the mothers betrayed by unscrupulous children, for all those who are seen as obstacles instead of human beings. My victory was their victory too. Time kept passing. Michael called me every few months. Short conversations, respectful. He told me about his life, his work, his efforts to be a better person. I listened, but maintained emotional distance. I had forgiven, but I had not forgotten. Maybe someday we could rebuild something. But that day had not yet arrived, and maybe it never would. And I was at peace with that. One spring afternoon, 3 years after that call from Sarah that changed everything, I was in my studio painting a landscape when Barbara came to visit me. She brought a newspaper in her hand with an excited expression. "Eleanor, you have to see this." She showed me the newspaper. There was an article about family fraud and financial abuse of the elderly. And there, mentioned specifically, was my case. Not with my full name, but with enough details for me to know they were talking about me. The article used my story as an example of how victims can fight and win, of how justice is possible even when everything seems lost. "You are famous," joked Barbara. "Your story is inspiring other people to defend themselves." I did not feel famous. I felt simply like Eleanor Davis, a 71-year-old woman who had fought for what was hers and had won. A woman who had been betrayed, but not destroyed. A woman who had found strength where she thought there was only weakness. "I am not special," I said while I kept painting. "I am just someone who refused to give up." "That is exactly what makes you special," replied Barbara with a smile. That night, when Barbara left, and I remained alone in my house, I walked through every room slowly. I touched the walls I had painted. I looked at the furniture I had chosen. I admired the plants I had cultivated. This house was mine, completely mine. No one could take it from me. No one could kick me out. It was my sanctuary, my refuge, my home. I stood in front of the hallway mirror and looked at myself. I saw a woman with gray hair and wrinkles that told stories. I saw emotional scars that would never heal completely. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw dignity. I saw a survivor. I saw someone who had gone through hell and come out the other side not only alive, but stronger. "You did it, Eleanor," I told myself out loud. "You fought and you won. You recovered your house. You recovered your life. You recovered your dignity." And it was true. I had lost a lot in the process. I had lost the illusion of having a perfect family. I had lost the naivety that made me trust blindly. I had lost the relationship with my son, at least the relationship we once had. But I had gained something more valuable. I had gained self-respect. I had gained inner strength. I had gained the certainty that I could face anything and survive. I went to sleep that night feeling completely at peace. There was no resentment in my heart. There was no hate. There was only acceptance and gratitude. Gratitude for Sarah, who had the courage to call me. Gratitude for Robert, who fought my case with dedication. Gratitude for the friends who supported me. Gratitude for the inner strength I discovered when I needed it most. The years that followed were the best of my life. I traveled to places I had always dreamed of knowing. I painted dozens of paintings. I wrote a small book about my experience that helped other victims of family fraud. I became part of a support group for elderly people facing similar situations. My story became inspiration. My pain became purpose. Michael and I eventually rebuilt a relationship. It was not what it had been before. It could never be. But it was something. We met for lunch once every few months. We talked about superficial things, mainly. He never stopped apologizing, and I never stopped reminding him that some wounds never heal completely. But there was forgiveness. There was peace, and that was enough. Now, when I look back at everything I went through, I do not feel bitterness. I feel pride. Pride in having defended myself. Pride in not having given up. Pride in having recovered what was mine. My house is still my sanctuary. But more importantly, I am my own sanctuary. No one can ever take that away from me. This is my story. The story of how a phone call changed everything. Of how I discovered that my son planned to steal everything from me. Of how I decided to fight instead of giving up. Of how I recovered not only my house, but my dignity, my strength, and my life. And if my story can inspire even one person to defend themselves, to not accept betrayal, to fight for what is theirs, then all the pain will have been worth it. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is not what they do to you, it is how you respond. And I chose to respond with strength, with dignity, and with justice. And that made all the difference.